It is said that you can tell a lot about a people from what they laugh at. Humor in many instances is an expression of where we locate our desire to make sense of life. It is often said that we laugh at the things that bring us most pain. Therefore, when there's a little bit of irony in that, we're able to go, you know, this is fucked up, but hell, it's funny. But ultimately, it must be said, it's only funny when you're laughing with it. And humor doesn't denigrate, at least real humor. I mean, even Kaskorana, you know, the culture of just going at each other for fun. We might poke holes at the inadequacies and the funny little quirks that we know our friends have, from their big nose to their dark skin. But it's done in a way where there's consent, where there's an open platform for the fact that this motherfucker knows he's like this, therefore I can make fun of that to the extent that I feel he can accept it before it crosses into real offending and real hurt. I think we know that place, and when we go beyond it, we choose to go beyond it. And when we go beyond it, it isn't funny anymore. It's just cruel. And real humor isn't cruel. So, on that note of real humor not being cruel, one of the most funniest people in this country of South Africa is a white comedian, actor, filmmaker by the name of Leon Schuster. Probably known to you all because of his illustrious film career with things such as Panic Mechanic, the infamous Oh Shucks series, where he really goes into part film, part candid camera prank. And Schuster's basically made hundreds and thousands, if not millions of rands from cashing in on the cultural dynamics of South Africa. And I feel that over the past couple of years, there's been glimpses of a discourse that attempts to look back at whether or not Leon Schuster was laughing with us or laughing at us. And I think by far, if we're being honest, Leon Schuster built his whole career by making fun of black people, by making fun of our poverty, by making fun of the ways in which we try to survive because of that, by making fun of our spirituality. Can anybody say Mr. Bones? By making fun of the ways in which the economy constantly denigrates us. Can anybody say Mama Jack? By making fun at our attempt to understand our cultures in the contemporary postmodern world. Can anybody say there's a Zulu on my stoop? Virtually every Leon Schuster movie is apartheid humor. It laughs at the expense of the African people. It cackles and it giggles at our inadequacies. So if you're a Leon Schuster fan, I dare say the only way you can still find that fucking funny is if you still hold a hell of a lot of internalized self-hate, which is the whole point of it all. To hate yourself to the point where you're able to laugh along with the very same destruction that perpetuates against you. Now, Leon Schuster's career starts off in what many would say a noble way. He goes, he does his thing in the comedy circuit in a pretty apartheid South Africa, catering to a Boer demographic. And what are Afrikaans people laughing at? Are they laughing at the weather? Are they laughing at small little political inconsistencies? By far and large, if you are white in South Africa in the 70s and the 80s, you're living a relatively comfortable life. Whether you are working in industry or you're working in the private corporate world, you're living a life that's detached from the reality of what the majority of people are going through. So I, for one, find that apart from simple little anecdotes of physical humor, of falling and tripping and bumping your nose, which is another aspect of Schuster's humor which caters to the white gaze, Schuster's real target of ideology is laughing at the people who have it the worst. Gauteng-a-lang.
Gauteng-a-lang, Gauteng-a-lang. I wanna stay in Gauteng-a-lang. Ik rij me streng, maar wat de heng. Het is lekker om te willen hier in Gauteng-a-lang.
Was a song that was basically a white view of the inadequacies of how Gauteng as a province was riddled with crime, not addressing the systematic elements of the dangers of living in Gauteng-a-lang. Leon Schuster has been the poster child for the lingering racist humor that characterizes every classical white person who might smile at you and hire you, but holds the view that you're nothing but fodder, labor, and something to laugh at. Most famously, in one of his most recent movies, The Inspection of Mr. Bones. Now, Mr. Bones really gets to my bones, because Leon Schuster understands the fact that if he made direct reference to any South African ethnic group, say Zulu, Barubeti, Xhosa, it would have been too obvious. It would have been a direct attack on people's culture. So he makes up Kuvuki land, somewhere in the hills behind Sun City, which in and of itself is kind of the postmodern juxtaposed complex of a fantasy land, right in the depths of Johannesburg. He makes up this place where, right beside modernity, African people still live a pretty much hunter-gatherer life. And right in the midst of that is a white baby who is raised and becomes the healer. Right then and there, by realizing that the history of apartheid banned, literally banned, practices of traditional African spirituality as witchcraft, is the inspiration for a white man almost in the same vein as Tarzan, liberating the primitive African black by bringing them into contact with the modern world. So you have this fictional game that is played indigenously by the people of Kuvuki land, Ikwarakwara, which is very similar to golf. And you have this African-American golf player, imaged in the same vein as a Tiger Woods, who finds out that he's actually the descendant of Kuvuki land's rightful heir, who calls Mr. Bones to find his son. What is this really saying? It's saying that black people, even those who find themselves in the exodus and the diaspora, can trace themselves back to the primitiveness of their homeland through the intercession and the help of whiteness. It was through this white Sangoma, this magical, mythical white savior, that the golf player is able to find his true land, throw away a successful golf career, and become the chief of Kuvuki land. You tell me what that means to you on any level. And I think the politics of Leon Schuster's movies has gone over many of our heads because we accepted it with a sense of subtle naivete and the overt sense that South African media numbs our attention span at pointing out true self-hate. So it must be said openly that Leon Schuster continues to accumulate a legacy, a wealth, a power, and an influence that is built on the bones, pun intended, of our dead ancestors. That is built on making fun of us to an extent where Leon Schuster's been doing blackface for half of his career, pranking Afrikaans and other white people who couldn't tell the difference between an actual person of color and a man in a prosthetics, a man in blackface, literally, To a point where in the so-called New South Africa, he couldn't pull it off. Because you need legitimate black people to make fun of other black people. Enter Desmond Dube, who, by the way, is one of my favorite South African actors.
The old South Africa, and this is the new South Africa. Today, the new and the old South Africa go shopping. Check this.
But let's be honest, his whole career with Leon Schuster, doing the candid camera movies, was cooning extraordinaire. And I mean, I'm not going to go into Dube's personal decisions to make movies that were basically using him to become Leon Schuster's auxiliary to making fun of black people, because he needed an actual black man to poke at the inadequacies of black people and lure them in because of struggle to make fun of their very same struggle. Die Dong Gepipi, or whatever that shit was. Leon Schuster, even after that, calls in Alfred Ndombela as the magical trickster Tikoloshe figure, who's there to literally become a representation of African tradition, scaring black people out of their primitive belief systems. You don't believe me? Let's go into it. The late Alfred Ndombela was Leon Schuster's puppet, representing a mythical archetype that seeks to separate abantu abamnyama from their own sense of pride in our own folklore. Here you have this dwarf who literally does nothing but spring out, surprise, attack, and assault deeply at people's own hidden pride in their beliefs of the magical. Here you have this laughing, giggling, cackling black figure. And what is it, if not the same thing that was done in the old American comedy circuit of making fun of the pygmy figure, of taking miniature black people, putting them in cages, depicting them as animals? Can't we see? What else do you need? Now, many would say Leon Schuster is not racist because none of his content denigrates black people vocally. He's never spoken out. See, that's where you do not understand what racism is. Racism is the structural, ideological power to suppress and oppress the culture, the heritage, and the history of a people by depicting them as laughingstock, as inferior, as that which is worthy to be rejected, scoffed at, and laughed at in the spirit of malice. And tell me if that's not what the whole career of Leon Schuster is about. Give me a single instance where he laughs with us, but is not laughing at us. So I say this in an era where we have tried to reinvent our own humor with sitcoms that we've invented. Shout out to the legends that have given us humor that speaks to us, that we are able to laugh with. The late Babu Joe Mafela, who gave us classical sitcoms such as Osgoodie's Nice, or Going Up, or Kululeka, where he addresses the politics of South Africa with each step. Shout out to the people that gave us sitcoms such as Ovelapi, Omzinwe Nsizwa. And because Headspace is now the culture channel, we'll definitely be doing videos on that, because we're living in an era where we need to remember that we have a rich history of joy, of pointing out the quirky little idiosyncrasies that can make the pain of our lives bearable by looking at the beautiful ironies of it. So I had to do the Schuster first so we can understand that there are certain aspects that have taught us to laugh at ourselves. And if we're still holding that dear, we won't be able to appreciate ourselves. So, oh shucks, Schuster's racist. Peace.